Welcome today to Darja Gutnick. Sorry, is it Gutnick or Gutnick?
Yeah. You're good.
One or the
Darja,
other.
Gutnick.
CEO and product lead at Bunch.ai. This is our last episode of the Product MBA Product Leadership Summit, so no pressure, but we have to make it a good one.
Super glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe to start out, I mean, the reason I wanted to have you on the series, I think there's a really interesting journey with Bunch that obviously I've followed the last few years. I know that you recently launched your sort of a new product, but I also know that this is the fourth iteration of the product. Maybe
on the same problem, yeah.
yeah. Maybe tell us about that journey. Like, how did you get? How have you got here?
Yeah, so the product you're talking about, maybe for the audience, is an AI leadership coach. So it basically helps young managers, but also are kind of in the beginning of their career to learn leadership skills. And the problem we're solving with this is that the management training market is quite antiquated. So you can read some books, you can obviously try to find some mentors, but we haven't really replaced the new kind of default mode when we think about learning how to be a good leader. We kind of left all the management, the seminars, the MBAs behind, but like, what now, right? So what we've done is to develop a companion that basically lives on your mobile phone. So currently it's an iOS. We're bringing the Android version at the beginning of next year. And it is helping you to not learn leadership in a way that how we used to, where it was kind of long and tedious, very theoretical, but instead we're offering it in like bite-sized 2 minutes a day leadership tips, which are based on two things, scientific research and also practitioners' kind of experience and learning. So we tap into both of these resources, and our team is curating that, but also putting instructional design elements on top of it. And so we also work with our own competency model and so on and so on. So yeah, that's generally the idea. We also have a community of leaders and aspiring leaders, how we call them, on Slack and also in the product, that interact with each other about these topics. And it's really, really exciting. But as you said, Henry, it's been, I think, 2.5 years that we've been basically trying to crack that nut. And I'm a psychologist by training, and I've started this company because I was wanting to build solutions that are reaching more people than I could as a human. So I was consulting before. I was a team coach and a leadership coach. And I felt that every time I gain a new client, I want to help them to increase their literacy when it comes to people skills, soft skills. But I also felt that no matter how many days I sell as a consultant, there always will be a ceiling. And even if I hire additional consultants, it always feels like I never will be able to actually make psychology and all this wisdom that we have as a community and as an ecosystem about how to build great teams, how to build a great culture. I'll never be able to really make it truly accessible. And we will always fall back to, when the CEO of Netflix like releases another book, when he writes about how he did it. And I always felt, but that's just one perspective. It's an amazing book and it's really cool. And there's so many out there, but kind of somehow we need to actually pull this all together and make it truly accessible to everyone who is starting out to build a business or starting out to build a team. And so that was always driving me, this kind of like feeling almost. I wouldn't say it's a particular problem or a particular vision or whatever. I always felt there's just like a very clear drive to, this is kind of my life's mission. Like, I need to really resolve this because I know that in psychology and in the conversations with experienced leaders, I always felt there is so much knowledge there. And on the other hand, when I met with people that are struggling with their teams, I always felt, there were so many hacks for this situation. There's so many mental models and frameworks, kind of like in product management, right? Like when you don't know how to make a decision, you just need to know who to ask or where to find the answer. Like probably your answer is somewhere out there. You just need to like dig in the right corners. And so I wanted to shortcut that tedious process of like digging in the right corners. Also because when we think about people problems in comparison to product problems, it's really hard to ask for help. Like it's really hard to go out there and say, yesterday I was fighting with my co-founder and I feel really bad and guilty about it and also ashamed. And by the way, this was a conflict. What can I now do? Like, how can I approach this? It's really hard. So I wanted to open up and democratize that like kind of knowledge, I think, with this product. And so when we started out, we started more on, we always had a similar customer, I think, when you think about this like customer problem, let me look it up. So customer problem solution tech growth pyramid. Yeah. It's called the pivot pyramid. If you are interested in including this in the resource, it's actually really interesting. I can send you the link after. Yeah, so basically when we were looking for product market fit, right, we were thinking about the problem from a very holistic perspective. We looked at organizations, at teams, at managers, at the team, like at the individual level. And we started to approach it from like all different perspectives. And I think the first iteration we did was a culture assessment product, because we looked at it from like, oh, we're a B2B business. Since when I was consulting, I dealt, of course, my work was with the individuals, but kind of the whole business case was, you know, you like sell this package X to this customer Y, and then you go show up and do the workshops with them. And I think when we talked with advisors and also with our existing customers back then, and it didn't even occur to me, I think, to think about it from like a consumerized enterprise perspective, or like, ooh, I maybe need a product for the individual. I just was rolling inside of my corridor of like, we already have customers. Yeah. Right now we're delivering a service and our job is to productize that service. So I think that might have been an interesting point to question what is the right business model for like this problem, instead of kind of just out of comfort, maybe even, or out of security, say like, hey, we have these 25 customers, they already pay, they already know us, and now we develop this new product with them, which I mean can make sense in many, many cases. But so we started in the B2B space, built one platform that was measuring how team dynamics are doing. So we used a psychological model that was developed in Stanford, built it into a product, sold it to people, people were using it, but then we ran into an issue, two issues actually. When you measure what's going wrong in a team, you still don't know what to improve. And so the team leads and also the team members that then receive these beautiful diagrams and the text and so on, like, this is what your team is good at, this is what your team maybe needs to improve on. They were obviously immediately asking, how do we improve now? Yeah. And so, and that was a retention issue, right? Because they were like measuring, and then of course they could measure again in like 3 months or whatever, but they kind of were seeking this like development module in between. And we were really scared about this because we were like, yeah, but we are like this little startup and we want to productize this. If we now start to develop development programs, we're going to be a consultancy again. We don't want to do that. So we tried to partner with consultants and coaches to deliver this. But then we figured out, damn, if we do this, it's so hard to control quality. And so we would need to either develop this in-house, so like basically like hire these consultants and then send them out into the field to the customer and then measure again. So like the product and the platform is basically the measurement vehicle, and the development work happens with the humans again. And I was one day sitting at home and thinking like, here I am again, scaling with humans. Why did I want to build a product? This is not really working. And so we then went into a few other experiments. And one of them was Emma. So it was a Chrome extension that was living on top of LinkedIn. It was picking up different data using machine learning and basically translating it into a psychological profile. So, and I think the reason why we started to experiment in this direction was that we were thinking, okay, development seems to be really hard to crack with a product at that point in time. This was like 2017, 2018. And we were looking into the market and kind of seeing, is anyone else doing it? And saw, okay, there's like Coach Hub and Sharpist and like these people and Better Up, but they also are just marketplaces. So again, like the human is doing the development work. Yeah. And here was again, where I started out, I wanted to actually have a scalable solution to this problem. So I'm like, I'm not going to replicate this. This is like where I wanted to go away from. Yeah. So we then looked into hiring a little bit, because we basically thought, okay, maybe this is not the right application field for our type of thinking framework and what we have developed. So maybe let's try hiring. I wasn't 100% convinced on it, but I wasn't bold and confident enough to say, no, this is not along with who we are or what we want to be and our vision. Even though there's tons of opportunities in hiring, this is not going to be our path. So we had a limited time frame. So we had 3 months where we said we want to either de-risk or throw out of the window this like hire a bunch for hiring idea. So we built Emma. Emma was extremely successful on the consumer level. So we had, when we launched it on Product Hunt, we had like 10,000 downloads within the first 2 weeks, which was crazy for us because, you know, when you're in B2B, this is a big number.
Yeah.
And we eventually ended up shutting it down because we didn't risk a legal risk quickly enough. So we knew it's a bit shaky with like the terms and conditions of LinkedIn. But at the same time, there were so many lawsuits going on with like HiQ, and we were thinking, okay, we need to de-risk whether this is like a huge, at all, this is valuable for us, and then we'll deal with the kind of implementation risks. And so when we got to the point of implementation risks, LinkedIn got really, really sensitive about it, and we eventually we got like a soft cease and desist letter, and we had to like deal with them. We de-escalated it, was all good. Like LinkedIn is in good relationships with Bunch, or Bunch is in good relationship with LinkedIn at this point, but it was like a difficult period. However, I think what was really cool, Emma was built on top of the product structure and the psychological framework, and also a little bit of the tech framework from the previous product, from like culture assessment tool. And when we stopped Emma, we took what we had developed in Emma, for instance, the 14 archetypes that you now can see in the AI leadership coach. We took that and basically built it into the third iteration of, or the current iteration of the solution to the problem we're trying to build. So we always took whatever we could that we had already developed in assets, and then we translated it into the next product. And I think how we ended up at this last iteration was we basically went back to the whiteboard. And I think one particular factor played a big role. As I started out, I was responsible for business, and my co-founder, Anthony, who is also a social scientist, was responsible for product. Mainly these things happen like this when you are like an early stage startup. We went into a room and I'm like, I've never done product. I have no idea what this is. So like, you do this. And he's like, I love product management. I've read so many books about it. And I've also done a little bit in my previous company. So like, I'm going to do this now. That's it. So with this, we rolled, and we discovered along the way that given my domain knowledge, given the fact that I was a psychologist and I was like the original kind of consulting business I brought in, it's really hard for me to not be in product, and it doesn't make sense. And so we struggled with this, specifically in the last months leading up to this decision. And eventually we made the decision, like, Darja, you have to do product, because this is going to be faster for us. Like, you have a lot of intuition around this stuff that I don't have. And like, I can handle lots of shit. And Anthony is an amazing all-rounder. So he basically said, I'm going to take on the biz dev stuff and the legal stuff and the ops stuff and everything else that's there. Like, let me run the business and you like run the product. And it's been one of the wisest decisions we have made. It was definitely difficult, but it was really good. And the other part was that I also, as a founder, I think, went back to the whiteboard and also was kind of really, you know how you're put under so much pressure by everyone all the time, right? Like, we have investors, and we have different investors. We have US-based investors, we have European investors. European investors typically look for like early revenue, B2B, enterprise stuff. And like, our American investors are super bullish on like, Bunch has to be the #1 standard default solution to the problem of like management training in 2020, which we agree with. I share that vision. But until we won our American investors, we oftentimes, I think, were in a situation where I knew what we need to do is actually work with a freemium model. We need to use consumerized B2B models, and like, we need to get to the actual end user and make sure they can learn and it works for them, and only then scale up to the B2B space. And I think I wasn't bold enough or courageous enough in that moment to actually really argue this against like our existing investors at that time. And so we always kind of try to, you know, satisfy all stakeholders in a way. And I think in that year, so 2019, when we switched roles, I also had to get to this point where I just admitted to myself, okay, look, this is one of the last shots. Like, this is probably the last shot we have.
Yeah.
And I started this company with a reason. We've been on that journey. It costs us so much energy. It costs us so much lifetime. Like, at this point, I don't care. Like, if people don't like our strategic decisions, I don't care. I will listen to their input, but I will not care when I make the decision. I need to stick to what I think this companies ought to do, and while staying very open and fluid to all feedback and input, I gotta do the thing. And I think I'd like something switch in my head, and so we went forward with what we have now, and it is the most successful product we ever built. We have about 5,000 downloads. We just launched like last week, so it grows much faster than any of the other products we ever built. And we have really good engagement and retention rates too, so it looks quite promising all in all.
Nice.
Sorry for the lengthy answer.
No. I was just thinking, like, there's a lot of directions and directions we can go, and a lot of lessons in that I wanted to just highlight. I think firstly, there's this, people talk a lot about pivot, persist, these kinds of topics, and it's really easy to read about these things. So first thing is, I think the grit and persistence that your team has showed, obviously led by yourself, that is something that's really important to product leadership. Secondly, also, I found it fascinating following your journey around the fact that you maybe talk about that process of pivoting, right? Because, we talked earlier before this about the importance of mission, right? So you can't, pivoting is not just scattershot, let's run all over the place. Like, you're pivoting on something, there is an axis that you're pivoting on. Maybe talk about the importance of mission and how you have, I saw you talking through your thought process, or like how you sort of revisited and retouched with that whenever you were pivoting.
Yeah, so I think maybe one other learning on this particular mission, or the role of mission in this process for us, was I think I understood only this year or last year, so between 2019 and 2020, how important it is to actually have a glass clear mission statement. As a founder, you always intuitively know what you're after. At least that's how I felt, and that's how I also saw it in many other founders. Like, what the right direction is, because there is so much intuitive knowledge inside of you telling you kind of like, no, stay away from this. Like, in my case, hiring, like, great problem, so many people on it, like, you go guys, I will support you, but like, not my problem. And then this development thing, like, this is my thing. And then even if the market tells me, or even if not the market, but like the naysayers tell me like, but this is only human, it's always gonna be human, like, it's never gonna be like not human. And I'm like, maybe you're right for many contexts, but maybe for particular use cases, we actually can automate it to a degree, and let me try anyways. And I'm very happy I did. So I think for me, like in the development space, I always felt this is where I live. This is where my personal kind of life mission is as well. And even if it's hard, it doesn't mean that if you're mission driven, that it's like easy, or it's like you're kind of fish in the water, whatever. It's like super uncomfortable all the time over there, but I still know that's my thing. But in order to rally your team around this mission, you need very good words. We humans think in words. I mean, we also think in numbers, but when we communicate, we think mostly in words. And if you don't have extremely polished, and I don't mean polished in terms of design necessarily, whatever, but like, if you didn't put the work to not only write down your mission, but also go over it at least 100 times, that's how many I need at least, to make it crisp, catchy, sharp, and concise, with partners on your team, with your co-founders, with people that know writing. In this case, one very crucial role was played by a team member that we have on the team, who is our growth lead. So Curtis, who's with us since 2 years now. And we, when we had the US investment, we started to build up the American team as well, and kind of like flipping the company to an Inc. and all of this, so that we are fundable in the US, and also being able to sell the product as an American company, which makes a lot of things often easier. So we had these flights to New York with Curtis many times. So it was like 6 to 7 hours side by side, like slightly awkward, but also kind of good. And in these hours, in these flights, I think 2 or 3 times, we literally, I think, spend once a whole flight and once like half a flight just talking about why this company exists and why it's there and like how it all happened and all the different anecdotes and bits and pieces. And then he iterated on the statement with me, I think like so many times, until we got to a point where we said, our vision is to create a world where everyone has great leadership, where we're not bogged down by misunderstandings, by corrupted interests and other bullshit that happens when you like structure human collaboration.
Yeah.
And our mission on this way is to make sure that everyone who wants to becomes a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to that level of clarity from like, I like human things, I'm a psychologist, and like I want everyone to collaborate great, like that really took me a while. And I can only encourage everyone who is on that journey, don't ever think you're over investing in like semantics or copy or whatever. It's so important, because the moment you get to a good level, everyone will align around you. So everyone on the team will understand better, everyone from your investors will understand better. Happens because you gained clarity in how you phrase and communicate your mission and vision. And that's so important. I think if I would have done this much earlier, we could have saved time for sure.
Yeah, that's such a good lesson. I mean, it's something I talk about with product vision as well. So like translating company mission into, you know, slightly more product direction. Like I call it like I think this comes from Buddhism. I picked it up somewhere, but like the one decision that solves 1,000 decisions. You know, if you get that right and clear and aligned around things like prioritization, just become obvious, alignment easy,
100%.
getting all these stakeholders sort of like trying to push in different directions, etc.
So if you ever find yourself in a situation where people tell you like, hey, we like measure whether this decision is helping us to achieve our vision, and you sit there and you feel that's bullshit, right? Like, yeah. I understand what you're saying. Vision is important and stuff, but like, how can I make my vision statement a filter for like which feature to prioritize? If that's happening, that means you don't have clarity enough. That doesn't mean that the approach is wrong. It just means that your vision or mission statement are not clear enough yet. And you don't have to feel bad about it, because it's extremely hard. And the biggest mistake that people make is that they don't put the hours, like they don't put the effort in actually making it really good. And if you do, everything becomes easier.
Yeah, 100. No, I can't agree more. Same thing, you know, Product MBA, really the core of the mission is support and being practical, hands-on. So, you know, I ask myself, if somebody comes with an idea or I come up with an idea, is this practical? Is it hands-on? If it's not, then it's just not our thing. You know, whatever, like, we're not going to worry about it. It means that you become effective, because first you're defining a clear point of value. Secondly, you're just delivering on that value. And I think I mean, as with all this sort of like high level stuff, you know, I think coming, you know, background to why we're, you know, talking today really about product leadership. It's not about the, you know, granular processes, like how are we managing sprints? How are we, you know, is our development process effective? It's really about the high level stuff. Right? Are we working on the right thing? Like high level, does it make sense? Like, how do we know we're working on the right thing? Does it tie in with our company mission? Does it tie in with, you know, your personal vision, ethics as a founder as well? These kinds of questions which are not asked, but are ultimately like the core of being effective as a product leader. And I think that is, you know, maybe to wrap up, that's the thing that I want people to take away. And I think that Dara is, you know, you're an excellent example of someone that's not, you know, trained in product management, like relatively new to it, but you've intuitively got the important part of what you're doing, which is, you know, mission, being bold, being persistent as well, making these sort of tough, gritty decisions, as you said, of like actually putting your hand up and saying like, no, we're not doing that. Even when you have experts in the room, you've got, you know, mentors, investors, etc. and just going back to first principles and saying, like, does this make sense for us? I think that is
Yeah.
the lesson that I think, you know, people should take away from this conversation.
100%. I think, I mean, I don't want to downplay the more like technical part of product management, because for us, it's, for instance, extremely, so our tables shifted like 180 degrees. In the beginning of the year, we didn't have a product. We had a very determined team, like, we're going to build a scalable L&D solution for the millennial generation when they want to learn about soft skills and leadership, and we're going to push it in the market. It's going to be great, but like how it's going to work, no one had a clue. Like, we were running 5 experiments per week, or more in some sprints, I think like up to 8 or 10, and we were kind of like digging in all sorts of different directions, to where right now we have our like 5 core metrics. We know exactly kind of like how to, we have so much stuff on the roadmap. Like our problem now became creating a good process to be able to deliver on it quickly and not like burn the team out along the way and things like this. So funny enough, right now, my challenge is to find, together with our CTO, Charles, to find a good system and a setup that enables a small team like ours to deliver reliably and quickly on very ambitious technical goals and also product goals. So right now it's kind of more bread and butter, and I actually struggle a lot because that's not like kind of my strong suit. And so we are thinking about like how to build a team around us so that this kind of more in my making sure like the communication is really good, helping the team to kind of track along on the milestones and things like this. Like, we're definitely not in a place where we're like super stable with that. And so anyone who's listening and looking for product management opportunities, we are looking for a junior product manager very soon, I think, to support me and Charles, but also for designers, always looking for developers, of course. So anyone is interested, reach out to me anytime.
Send me a link as well. I'll post in our community.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested.
Sure.
I think that's a great place to sign off, actually. Yeah, really interesting to hear that, you know, what's happening behind the journey that, you know, we see on LinkedIn and on your website.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time, Darja. I mean, I suppose as we are sending this out to aspiring product leaders, we should send them to Bunch. So that is Bunch.
Yes.
bunch.ai, where you can test the leadership app. I tested it out. I quite enjoyed it. But as I'm not actively managing a team, I sort of left it in the background for when we grow a little bit. But anyway, thank you so much for the time, Darja.
No worries. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much as well. And yes, highly appreciate your interest and your encouragement as well. Like, I think it means a lot to me to read the words of like, no, it's okay. Even if you don't have a formal education, like, you have so many learnings, please speak about them. So on a personal note, thank you so much for encouraging me to speak about it.
That's part of our mission as well, really, to get people to, you know, get over these mental barriers at times and realize that they're probably actually doing a good job. Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much for the time. Thank everyone for listening as well. Bye.